Okay then, folks, welcome back to Brew Time. This week I'm chatting with Chris Donaldson, author of this incredible book. We're going to go into this in depth, but I urge you, if you're into your overland travel, biking, or just fancy a bit of an adventure, this is the book to read. It's called Going the Wrong Way. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce. Good to see you.
And you, mate, and you. Now, I mean, you've kept this. You kept this adventure close to your heart. Bear in mind, you did this in the late 70s to early 80s, and you didn't write this book until, what, 3 years ago? 3 years ago?
Well, I sort of did and I didn't. I started writing the book when I got back because I realized I don't think anybody's ever done something like this before. And of course, before the internet, you didn't have the sort of information overload that we have now. So I started writing the book and I got halfway. I got the manuscript done, I guess. And then I read somebody came in with a book called Jupiter's Travels by Ted Simon.
Yeah.
And I thought, you bugger. You've done it. You've beat me to it. So I gave up the whole thing and put it in the drawer and got on with life. And I cursed Ted Simon up and down, I can tell you. But I was lucky enough to, just the year before I published the book, I kept talking to him and he invited me down to his house in the south of France.
Yeah.
And he was able to give me some great tips about writing and so on and so forth. And we sat and talked about traveling in the 70s and 80s. Really lovely guy. So it was all sort of turned full circle of that. But yeah, I actually started in 1980, 81, writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished in 2000. So it's a very long, drawn-out affair.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't read it. I listened to it. I bought the audio book. My missus is a big reader, but I like to listen to stuff, when I'm doing other things. So I bought the audio book, and literally, I think in about 3 sessions, I finished it. It is the guy you've got reading the book does a fantastic job of bringing it all alive.
Right.
Obviously, your writing is is the backbone of that, but the audio book is brilliant. So, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about what was it that you did?
What was it that I did? Well, I guess coming from Belfast, Northern Ireland, brought up in the 70s, it wasn't the best place to hang around. There wasn't an awful lot going on apart from bombs and bullets going off as far as the social life's concerned. So, like a lot of guys my age, we wanted to get out of town, get away somewhere. And I thought Australia would be a great place to go to. And I remember when I was about 16, I just bought a BSA Bantam. And I read a story in the Motorcycle News about this girl who was currently riding around the world on a motorcycle on a BSA Bantam. So I thought, geez, I could do that. I've got a Bantam. So I decided that's the way I would get to Australia. I'd ride the motorbike to India and then ship the bike from there to Australia. Not a Bantam. I hasten to add, a Bantam could hardly get me to school in the mornings when I went to Australia. But that was the start of the notion in my head. And if you remember back when you're 16, you get some silly ideas in your head. You just and you just run with it,
Yeah.
So that was the start of the seed was planted, if you like. And of course, when I decided when I was 21 and had a few quid, finished my education, thought I'll head off to Australia now. I had a much better bike for that. I had a Moto Guzzi Le Mans, which is not everybody's ideal tour, but it's the bike I had at the time and the bike I decided to go on.
Yeah. Why Australia? What was it about Australia that lit the fire for you?
I think in those days it was either America or Australia because I never did very good at French or languages, so it had to be somewhere that spoke English or some version of it. And I had relations over there, and I was going to get a job, sell the bike, and maybe stay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was get out of town and maybe come back, maybe not. I was going to see what happened. So it was a one-way ticket. So just whatever notion I had for Australia, which I still have, seemed like a good place to go to.
Now we'll spoil it a little bit. Spoiler alert for people. You didn't actually make it to Australia on that trip when you first set off, like was it 1970? Was it 79, 78, 79?
79.
79.
Headed off. So I ended up in Argentina a year and a half later. So it's hence the title of the book, Going the Wrong Way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I meant to leave in September, left in October, got delayed getting visas and stuff in London, having a good time. And then just was about to leave London, and the Ayatollah Khomeini decided to take over the American embassy in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically closed the road east. So after sort of 5 years of planning and working out where I was going to go, I actually had the AA used to would have given you, not a, well, you give a roadmap, obviously, but just guidebooks, and they would give you a detailed list of places to go along the way, printed off in paper. So I basically left on my way to go to Australia, and all of a sudden I had nowhere to go. I couldn't stay in Europe because it was November. On the motorbike's no fun. So I thought, well, may as well go to Africa. There's nowhere else to go. So I headed down south, just heading for the sun. So at the time it was a disaster because it was the whole planning, the whole idea of the trip was gone. I thought if it got down to Kenya, I could take a boat from there to India or across to Australia from there. But basically, it was fly by wire, fly by the seat of my pants at that stage. Because again, it's hard to remember back, but before the internet, you had guidebooks. And guidebooks were basically out of date after they were printed anyway.
Absolutely.
But, I had no idea, but sort of third form geography as to what was in Africa, what was in the Middle East. I was really flying blind wherever I was going to go. Really didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to find when I got there.
I mean, your story, literally from the word go, your whole story to me is a lesson in never giving up, and that's what I tell people all the time. Is just that, like, set your eyes on the prize. Don't worry about how you get there. Set your eyes on the prize and just deal with what comes your way. And if you have to take a few steps back, or you've got to go to the side, over it, under it, whatever you need to do, just deal with it and just keep going. Just keep going.
Well, even now, I mean, that's what overland motorcycling is all about. Once you get out of Europe, you don't know what's going to happen next. There's borders, there's political tensions, there's money problems, civil wars, whatever. These things, that's what you're there for in a way, is to come up against these obstacles and to get over them. And it was a great life lesson, because that's what life is meeting up obstacles and getting over them.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that sort of, if you are sort of generations, and maybe one or two generations, say, after me, you'll remember a time when there was no internet, there was no GPS, sat navs in your cars or anything, and you used to navigate via maps and that. Trying to comprehend what you did, what Ted Simon did, and all the people, from who were traveling in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s, people who were traveling around the world then. To me, it's just like I did it 2012 to 2014. So we had the internet by then. We had very basic sort of sat navs. So it was, and if I had any problems, well, I could generally find Wi-Fi somewhere, and I could just, put a call out on social media. Is anyone near here? Can anyone help? I mean, you literally, you were solely relying on people round about you, the kindness of strangers. And it comes over again in your book that you can rely on that to an extent. Obviously, you had your fair run-in with strangers as you were coming down through Africa, for sure. But you definitely had people who helped, didn't you? You met people, locals and other travellers, who helped.
Well, I think one of the great things about motorcycling is people like motorbikes, and they're generally like motorcyclists, and they're generally nice to motorcyclists. I mean, people think, we got Hells Angels, we got bad people on motorbikes, but generally most blokes like motorbikes, whether they ever had one or not. If they had one, all the better. And most girls have a notion for boys and motorbikes, obviously, because we're good looking, generally. So they are they're a great breaker of the ice when you arrive in a small town or a big town, wherever you are. They break the ice, people come over and talk to you. So rather than standing at the corner of a train station with the rucksack on your back, you're sitting there with a big red Italian motorbike. People notice you and say, "What are you doing here?" And so it's a great conversation starter.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
after that, hopefully you can meet the right guys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
and life takes over. Conversation starts, and you hopefully get on with them.
Can you give people a sort of rough idea? I don't expect you to go through it verbatim, but a rough idea of the route you took, certainly down to South Africa.
Yeah, well, obviously left left Belfast, London, and London, and the end of October, the beginning of November. I think it was November the 5th or 6th was whenever the Islamic Revolution happened in Tehran. So I just wanted down to Greece as quick as I could to get some heat.
Uh-huh.
And then the idea was to take a boat to Egypt, but the boat to Egypt wasn't sailing. So we took a boat to Israel, and they're reckoning that Israel's beside Egypt. So once we get there, we can go across. Of course, there was also, it wasn't quite as bad as it is now, but we couldn't get out of Egypt, into Egypt from Israel. Couldn't get into Jordan. So I had to take a boat back to Cyprus and then over to Syria, which was a bit scary, and then through Jordan, and then another boat right around to Aqaba in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really long way around the Middle East, which was a bit of a disaster at the time because it took too much money. And one of my main problems, when you come out of university, you've got no money, you work part-time. Money was always a big issue. So I ended up in Egypt in Christmas 1980, and then headed south, thinking there must be a road. Well, I thought there would be a road and a railway across the desert. I ended up driving the Moto Guzzi Le Mans across 500 miles of sand, which is probably one of the stupidest things I've ever done. But also one of the most... somebody said the best thing about it, the best adventures are the ones that are hell at the time, but you can look back and think greatly of great things of them in the pub many years to come. And
they're the ones you remember, isn't it? When it goes wrong, when you're just thinking, why the hell did I do this? Just whose idea was this? That's when you remember it for sure.
Yeah. So Sudan was certainly one of the hardest countries to go through because there was no roads. I think there was about 10 miles of tarmac in the whole country. Few adventures in a train down to South Sudan. And
come on, you've got to go into that. You've got to cover that. The issues on the train.
Well, we knew there was no petrol in Juba, so we carried a couple of jerry cans with me on the train. And then I got arrested for having 2 jerry cans of petrol on the train, which I thought was a bit much because there's guys with bow and arrows, hatchets, guns, everything like that on the train. And I thought,
yeah,
I'm just sitting here with a couple of tins of petrol and they're arresting me. What's the deal here, guys? But they didn't say it like that. But it was quite an adventurous rail trip. It took about 2 or 3 days to cover 400 or 500 miles on a train down to Sudan, down to Juba. We got there was no petrol, so stuck there for a week or so, managed to get some petrol. Got to Juba after another 500 miles off the road on the bike, which was basically disintegrating as I went along. Mm-hmm. At that stage, Moto Guzzi Le Mans were never made for dirt tracking, but they're actually very good at it.
Yeah, they didn't have the most reliable reputation, did they? I think they're a lot better now, the Moto Guzzis, but yeah. You tested that.
Well, the engine was always solid, it was well tested, so yeah. So I ended Uganda just after Idi Amin had got dethroned from Kampala. He was still at large somewhere. So Kampala was a bit dodgy. And really, at that stage, it was pretty chaotic because it had a map of North Africa, which went down to the south of Sudan. So I actually drove off the edge of my map without finding. It was only when I got to Kenya, I could find somebody with a map that could give me for Southern Africa to see where I was actually going next.
Yeah.
So it was that sort of chaos. But as I say, that was what part of at that stage, it was realizing that one of the beauties about traveling is not knowing what's going to happen next and meeting the unexpected and enjoying the chaos that happens, if you like, which goes against everything we've been brought up to do. We've been brought up to plan everything and do everything in an organized fashion.
Yeah. And
to go against that, it's not planning what's happening tomorrow, not know what's happening tomorrow. There's very few people who live their lives like that these days.
But it's quite
campus
liberating,
mode.
isn't it? Once
Totally.
you're on when you're on the road for a prolonged length of time, like I've said it before on this podcast, it takes a while. For me, it took about 6 to 8 weeks before it stopped being just, a biking holiday, a biking trip, and it becomes life. And then, as you said, it just becomes life, doesn't it? You just become used to not knowing where you're going to find fuel, not knowing where you're going to
Yeah.
spend that night. It's just part of just everyday life.
Yeah, you don't worry. If you're trying to get to Kampala and you don't get there tonight, well, it doesn't matter. You get there
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
What's a day matter? Whereas working in the West, an hour matters. If you're an hour late for something, it's a big deal. Whereas when you're traveling a day here, a day there, it doesn't matter. If you miss a day, if you go and see something else, it's all part of the tapestry of what's happening.
Have
Which way
you
did
have you?
you did
Sorry, go on.
did you go down Africa at all on your journey?
Yeah, my plan was to circumnavigate Africa, go down the west, and come back up the east. But it all went a bit wrong for me in Mauritania. When I went, the Boko Haram Islamic fundamentalists, they were exploding out of Central Africa. They're the ones that
Yeah.
kidnapped the Nigerian schoolgirls. Well, they'd sacked Mali, and they were starting to come into Mauritania as I was coming from like Western Sahara. So the government flooded there's two roads crossing the Sahara there, and they flooded the roads with checkpoints, police and military checkpoints. And like it was my first real taste of overland travel outside of the West. And like I remember arriving in Morocco and shitting myself. And like I've been to Morocco
Pretty
18
freaky.
times now, and Morocco is just so nice and friendly, isn't it? But at the time, it was just like, wow, what's this? So when I got to Mauritania, and like I remember the border guard, the policeman from Western Sahara, shaking my hand and saying "Bon chance," good luck, and just looking at me like, you're fucked, mate. And when I went in there, I basically just got robbed. Every single time I met the police, I got robbed. And I know now it's a normal sort of interaction with the police. They point guns at you and they'll ask questions, and that's just
you give them money.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. But I was just getting robbed all the time, and I ended up snapping my frame, and then I got taken by a gang at Rosso for a while, and they pretty much relieved me of quite a lot of money. So I got through that, and then was just like, forget West Africa. So I ended up back in London. And then from there, I headed off basically east and missed out Africa this time. Went across like Russia and down to Oz and across to the Americas. Yeah. I was going to say, like that mentality you develop when you're traveling of, oh well, we'll just deal with whatever comes. Has that stayed with you?
Unfortunately, yes. I screwed up quite a few situations in my life since then. But it's always been good fun. But I probably would have made a lot more money and had a much easier time if I hadn't had that attitude. And going the wrong way is not just a title of a journey. It's sort of it's a bit of a lifestyle choice as well. Yeah, there's a bit of that in the book as well. I've always tried to, not always tried to, but it's always just seemed to happen to fall into doing the wrong thing at the wrong time or end up in the wrong place or with the wrong people, but it's made life a lot more interesting.
We've never met before this, Chris, have we? But like listening to the book and experiencing your journey and there go bits of your life through this book, you strike me as the very like epitome of free spirit. You are your own person, you're your own man, you make your decision, and that's that. If you don't want to do it, fine, but I'm gonna do it this way.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky or unlucky enough to be self-employed most of my life, and I've been able to live that to an extent. Certainly, at the age of 65, sort of looking at retirement, thinking where did my pension go and that sort of thing. Probably would have been better off working in the bank, but I've had a good time.
Yeah. So after Africa, you ended up back home, didn't you? You ended up back in Belfast.
Yeah, well, I got to Kenya and I couldn't afford the boat to go to India or to go to Australia, so I basically had to give up on that. So the idea then was to get to Cape Town and to Africa and then sell a bike and try and do get home whatever money I could get from selling a bike. So I got to Cape Town and was lucky enough. Luck is a funny thing. It happens to you when you're least expecting it. But there was a yacht race going across from Indonesia to Europe, and one of the guys on the boat had come off, stopped in Cape Town, and hurt his leg. So I got his position on the boat, which was kind of cheating because this is an international yacht race, a bit like a Volvo, but like the was it the Volvo Ocean Race, which are it's like Formula One of yacht racing.
Yeah.
And I basically got on a job in the boat after sailing dinghies in the Sea Scouts. So it was a bit of fast learning to go from there to from being a solo motorcyclist for 6 months to being a part of a crew of eight people sailing for 5 weeks across South and North Atlantic. So I sailed back to Europe after a few fun and games as well. A rudder broke off in the middle of this North Atlantic, which I had to get that sorted out in Cape Verde. Got back to Europe, and luckily enough, the sponsor of the yacht race was a shipping company, so they shipped a bike. They were going to ship it home for me. I thought, well, where else do you go? And I said, well, wherever you want to go. And I said, well, what about America? I said, yeah, send it to Los Angeles. So I was able to pick up a bike 3 months later in Los Angeles, and it was pretty wrecked. It was been sitting on the docks for 3 months, and the clutch had seized up. So I had to ride the whole way up from Los Angeles up to Seattle, which is up in Washington near Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 1,200 miles with no clutch.
Jesus.
Which is a lot of push starts. I mean, obviously in a motorbike, you can change, once you get started, you can change gear by kicking it in and out of gears. But to get started at set of lights, I had to push start the bike, jump on it, and kick it into gear and get started.
Blimey.
So I did a lot of freeway driving at that stage.
Just keep moving. Yeah, like you didn't exactly have support along the way. You know, obviously you did a solo journey, but a lot of people have support back home, you know, from their families. Your family was pretty anti you going away, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. My dad had me lined up, and I was happy enough to join the family business. We're selling furniture shop, and he was wanting me to start straight off after Polytech. And I thought, no, I need to get away for a bit. So no, it was pretty much on my own financially, and well, so it wasn't those days. There wasn't a lot of support you could get from home. Anyway, I mean, to phone. I remember phoning home from Egypt, and it took all day to get through. You had to book a call in the post office, sit in a cubicle. It was about £5, which is probably 50 quid now to make a 5-minute call home at Christmas, you know. So it was, you were pretty much, I think the whole in 6 months I was away in Africa, probably rang home 3 times, you know. So as a parent now, looking back, it must have been a nightmare for my parents, to be fair.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, no matter where you go, you know, recently riding across India, you just pick up your mobile phone and dial home every day, every night, you know, for
absolutely.
But no, I mean, I left to go to Australia. I reckon it would take me 3 or 4 months and cost me about £1,000, which would probably about 4 or 5 grand nowadays. But at this stage, I've been away for a year on 4 or 5 grand, with including petrol money and everything else. So you can imagine it's pretty tight.
Yeah,
living pretty low in the hog. Worked in America for a couple of months, got a few quid, but looking back, one of my biggest obstacles to the whole thing was not having enough money for parts or beer or food in that order.
Yeah, like your the American section of this whole trip, it struck me that, you know, it was almost like you'd found a place where you kind of felt at home. That's kind of how it came across to me, is that it became more of a pull to get going again because you kind of felt settled where you were. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I worked in North Carolina for a couple of months. I had a girlfriend and met a crowd of guys I liked. And after you've been on the road for a year, sort of hard, especially in the likes of Africa, when you stop for a couple of months, so you do get settled very quickly. You feel quite at home. I felt very at home in the States, in North Carolina. So it was at one stage I was buying, should I just stay or should I go?
Yeah.
And when I was certainly in South America, I tended to think back as the States as being home rather than Belfast is so far away. It was ancient history by that stage, even though it was only a year ago. When you're traveling and so much is happening every day, time sort of, what's the word, shrinks to an extent that a day becomes a month sort of thing nearly. So much happens because living in working a normal job, so much, you can go a whole week without anything exciting happening, whereas you're traveling on the road every day is something happening. So it's time, I can't remember what the word is, shrinks, not expands. Anyway, but it becomes ever so much more focused on what's going on at the minute rather than
it becomes all about the now, doesn't it? The now and the next corner. Yeah.
And what had happened before I left on the trip was really not important anymore. It was like ancient history. So yeah, I mean, America was a very different experience from Africa. But probably, as I say, because so much had happened in Africa, I felt at home in the States and was having such a good time as well.
Yeah.
It was good crack. It was a bit of a booze cruise compared to going to Africa,
Yeah, you strike me as a fairly social character. You certainly, if there was a beer to be had or a woman to meet, you seem to get your fair share as you travel.
Well, I was 21 for God's sake.
I know. I mean, I was just reading it going, yeah. It's like this lad is living his life. Absolutely.
Well, one of the reasons I got my nephew Ben Doak to do the narration rather than myself is I thought it's really not right to have a 65-year-old man talking about picking up young nurses and drinking beers and whatever. At this stage in my life, it'd be better having somebody of the same age doing that, sort of reading the story. I think that hopefully came out better.
100%. That's your nephew. I didn't realise he was your nephew. Yeah. He does a fantastic job. He brings the whole book alive. It's so good. He's
a bit of a rock star. He plays in the Cavern in Liverpool at the minute. It's called the Gondolas. So he wants to be a narrator if anybody wants to take him on.
Honestly, folks, I'll leave links down below. You can get the book on Amazon, but you can get the audiobook as well. I think I got it on Audible. It's well worth it. Honestly, well worth. We will not do it justice. We're not going to be able to cover. We've literally just covered Africa like that, but Africa is a huge part of this book, and you won't believe the experiences Chris had as he was going through Africa. I mean, it's like a Hollywood action adventure movie, but it was real. It must have been quite cool for your nephew. Is it Ben, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been quite cool for him to sort of read the book and really relive your experience through the book. What does he make of it all?
Yeah, he saw a different side of me, certainly.
Yeah.
As you know yourself, whenever you come back from one of these trips, people say, how did you get on? And you start telling them, and people very quickly lose interest because they don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
they were just being polite asking you sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I suppose I guess for 40 years, people say, well, what about your trip around the world on the motorbike? I say, yeah, it was great. Whatever. You sort of know they're not really that interested. And you don't really want to go into that much detail either when you're standing in the bar,
Yeah.
So it was quite and interesting, let's say, for my friends and family to finally get the story written down in detail, you know?
Yeah, I bet. I get my whole trip was called TeapotOne. There's a long story, but the trip was called TeapotOne. And one of my mates, if he's with me and somebody comes up and starts asking about the trip or something like that, he just sort of looks at me and he's like, right, you got 10 minutes teapot time, and then that's it. That's all you're getting. Yeah. So I've got a little quota. Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard for other people, isn't it? Because if someone has never done something like that, they can't. I don't think people can really comprehend what it's like to live on your bike. In a totally different country, a totally different culture. There's nothing like it. There's no other form for me. There's no other form of travel that I've done that I can compare it to. I've not done the whole backpacking. Obviously, I've never cycled, on overland or anything like that. But I don't know if people will react to you the same if you're backpacking or if you're cycling. Like you said, on a motorbike, it's got this whole different element to it.
Yeah, you love it or hate it. You can't help but notice a motorbike.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whereas, as you say, you're a backpacker. You're just a backpacker. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, but you walk around the place. If you're in a car, nobody wants to talk to you because there's a window between you,
Yeah,
and
barrier.
you're
Yeah.
there's just a distinctive barrier, and everybody's got a car. But if you're especially in third world countries, big specs. A lot of people have motorbikes, but they're all 125s and that sort of thing. They're scooting about in scooters, and whenever you see in the 750 or 850, whatever it is, you do stand out. And it's not that you're trying to be better than anybody else, but by being noticed, you haven't got time to stay in a village for a week or a month and get to know everybody. You've got a couple of days. You want to experience what's going on, so you want people to notice you and talk to people now. You don't want to have to wait until Saturday night before everybody's in the pub, or whatever it is. So it's a great way of instantaneously getting. Well, it sounds wrong to say they get attention, but they say, "Hi guys, how you doing? I'm new here. Can you show me around?" You know?
Yeah, yeah. And isn't it? I found it initially really quite shocking is the wrong word, but it took me aback how open and generous complete strangers were to me, all around the world, basically. Maybe I change, maybe I drop my guard once I'm on the road. I don't know, but just almost everybody you meet to a man, they open up their lives to you. You know, it's just like, well, okay, where are you sleeping? Come and stay here. Have you eaten? Do you want some? Please come and have some food. And it's almost like they're insulted if you don't take them up on their hospitality. And it sort of struck me, and I thought, would I do the same? You know, would I do the same here in the UK if I met a traveller? And I don't think I would have until I travelled. Now I try to, much to the annoyance of my wife. But now I try to. But it is hard though, isn't it? In the Western world,
always bring strange people home with you, are you?
Yeah. Well, you know, I have done it, but yeah. Or like people I met when I was traveling. You know, you get a message from them going, "I'm going to be in the UK," so I'm just like, "Yeah, come, I'll return the favour.
Yeah.
Come and stay at mine." And my missus is like, "Who is this?"
I think the reason for it is a couple of reasons. I think one of the reasons is people are much better than everybody says. Bad impressions of horrible people around the world, but people are generally fairly good against all what you're told, especially in countries that you don't think they are going to be, apart from West Africa, obviously. But I do think so. I thought about quite a lot of my travels, and I think part of it is people feel a bond with you because they realize that you're traveling around the world, or you're going somewhere, and they want to do that themselves.
Yeah.
And by helping you, they're they feel like contributing to doing it, and it gives them a buzz as well that they're part of your journey, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think people do actually feel better by giving you that help.
I think they appreciate how vulnerable you maybe are as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you know how the format of the podcast works, Chris. I post up on my Patreon and on my socials to say who the next guest is, and people have the opportunity to leave like questions or comments, and we then go through them and, you know, hopefully answer their question. But it can be a topic for discussion as we go. How long do you have? I should have asked you this at the start.
Well, I'm about halfway through my beer, so I'm okay.
Right. Okay. I'll not keep you all night. Are you okay if we just crack on with some questions now then and just see where it takes us?
Yeah, I've got all night.
Sorry, Bob, what was that?
We've got all night, plenty of time.
Beautiful. Lovely job. Okay then, folks. Right. Well, as always, we'll head across to the clan over on Patreon, patreon.com/TeapotOne. First question. Andy. Hi both. Just wanted to say thanks for the book recommendation. I'll use it on my holiday to catch up, so may find the answer to my question then. But just in case, what was behind the need to complete this trip? Straight in there.
Well, I didn't complete the trip, I suppose, is the question. I ended up in Argentina.
But you have since, though.
I have since, yeah. Well, once I got the book out 3 years ago, one of my mates, Liam, who's another Moto Guzzi biker, he said to me, "Well, you never actually got to Australia. Why not have another go?" This was just in the middle of COVID, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I've got to do it on the same bike. I was lucky enough to have kept the bike over the years. So, again, problem solving. I thought, well, I've got a wife, family, work commitments. I can't just disappear for 3 months, let alone a year and a half. So, I did a plan. We'd do it in legs. We'd go do 2 week driving, park the bikes up somewhere, come back home, go back to work for 2 or 3 months, and then go back out again and do it over a period of about a year. So we left November 2001, got down to Athens. I don't know if I'll answer this question or not. Got a very long answer.
That's all right, no worries.
And then parked up in Athens with the Moto Guzzi guys there. Took the next trip 2 months later, got to Israel, which I'd been to before. And before I couldn't get out of Israel through Egypt or Jordan. This time they wouldn't let me into Jordan as well. So I had to go back to Athens again. So it was a bit deja vu there. The idea was to go through from Israel into Jordan and then into Saudi through to Dubai that way. So came back to Athens. Liam, for various reasons, I'm going to now, decided to come home. He gave up the trip, so left me on my own, which is a bit of a pain in the ass because it was his idea in the first place. So then I had to decide, well, am I going to go on or not? So, of course, being a stubborn git, decided, well, I'm going to go on. I've started, I'm not going to stop. So next leg was from Athens to Dubai, through Greece, Turkey, and Iran. Finally got past the American embassy in Iran, in Tehran. And then the next leg after that was Dubai to Lahore in Pakistan, which is an interesting trip as well. And then last March, after that was Lahore to Nepal, and then I flew back from Nepal to Brisbane. So I finally got there in 2003, 43 years after I left.
How did that feel?
So it's going to be the longest ever trip to Australia.
How did it feel to get to Sydney?
I felt great. I mean, one of the reasons, I suppose, part of it was finally completed the trip, as you say, but that's all sort of in the mind in a wee bit, in a way. But it was such a great welcome I got in Australia. It was fantastic. It was really good. Great to be there. Great to get there the way I got there, to finally complete the trip. I set off in 1979.
Yeah.
And I met a couple of guys through the book and through the trip that I actually met. I mean, one of the guys I stayed with in Israel, I'd stayed with when we were 43 years ago. Hadn't spoken to him since. Tracked him down through the benefits through Facebook. But met up for a beer and chatted about old times 43 years ago.
Wow.
So it was pretty amazing. Lots of other amazing bits about the trip in a way, but I suppose the destination, actually getting there is actually, I find, a bit disappointing. So how do you feel when you got there? I actually feel disappointed whenever I get somewhere like that, because it's the end of the journey.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, did it feel like a final big tick? Right, I've done it now. Or is it, I've never hidden the fact. I really struggled when I finished my trip. When I got home, it took me a good eight months, maybe more, to sort of settle into life back home.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just felt, it didn't feel like home anymore. I was different. I'd totally changed, but life at home and everyone I knew hadn't. You know, everyone's moaning about the same shit they were moaning about before you left. And I came back feeling really frustrated. Like, I wanted to grab people and like slap them and shake them and go, if you don't fucking like it, change it, do something about it. You know, it's up to you. But before you know it, eventually I just fell back into the old way of things, really, and sort of took a while.
Because if you, you know, if you can't change what's going on at home, it's the way life, it's the way civilization is. You got to either fit in with it or get out of it, you know, and that's why some people do drop out, I guess.
Yeah.
If you got to get on, you realize at that stage, if you're going to get on in life, you got to fit in, you got to conform to some extent. Otherwise, you're just going to be banging your head against a brick wall, you know.
Yeah. No, true.
But So,
Is
so
is
arriving in Australia was
so
it was a bit disappointing in a way because it was the end of the journey, and the first thing you think about is, well, what am I going to do next?
yeah.
Which I'm actually still thinking about.
What's the itch? Is there an itch that needs to be scratched?
There's a big itch. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Go
Well,
on.
I've got to get the bike home. The bike's still in Australia,
Really?
so hence there's a problem. Yeah, it's in a museum in it's a Moto Guzzi museum. It's called the Moto Guzzi Cathedral. There's a guy called Leo Tamers, as a farmer out there, and he's converted his barn into a Moto Guzzi museum. The last 100 years worth of Moto Guzzis.
Wow.
So he's caretaking the bike at the minute. It's having a rest.
Well, it's deserved it, isn't it? It's deserved it. How many miles on her now?
It's about 75,000 or so. Not that many really, but it's been a hard paper round for it.
It's been a hard 75,000 miles, though, isn't it?
It has been, yeah.
East Africa in the 1980. Bloody hell. Is this latest section, so from home to Sydney, is that going to be another book?
Yeah, well, I've started writing that.
Brilliant.
But so I have a very good record after taking 42 years to write the first book. I've done a pretty good record of writing books, but hopefully it'll be a bit quicker this time.
Well,
but the first book the first journey was very much a sort of coming of age story, and I've had quite a few non-bikers have read it and really enjoyed it, which has been nice, because I've tried to make it not a motorbike trip, because in a way it wasn't a motorbike trip. The motorbike was just a means of travel.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a big part of the trip because it's a means of travel. But the journey is more about who you meet, where you are, how it affected yourself, and how you get on with things. So it was looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was very much a coming of age story.
Mm.
This book's more of the title at the minute is Adventure Before Dementia, which is the other end of the life cycle, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully I haven't left it too late.
I look forward to reading that. Absolutely. It sounds like it's sounds like there's going to be a lot to chat about on that one. Andy's got a second question. He says, final question to you both. Having completed it, how do you address the post-trip blues? Well, we just sort of chatted about that. Like how did you deal with that coming back and settling back into life?
In the 80s, you mean?
Yeah.
It was pretty tough. As you say, I was quite depressed at the time, and I was suffering from a called hepatitis in South America. So I wasn't feeling great either. So
I mean, we can't skirt over that, Chris. You pretty much almost died. You were literally at death's door, were you not?
Well, I couldn't ride my motorbike, so I suppose that's the nearest possible step toward it. If you can't ride a motorbike, there's not much else left. So it was pretty grim. Again, it's one thing being sick when you're at home, but another thing being sick when you've no money and stuck in some shithole like Bolivia.
Yeah.
It's a different story altogether. So it's pretty tough going getting back to civilization. But I think I'm a pretty lucky guy. The coins landed the right way up, and I got okay, got the bottom okay, you know.
So coming back, how did you deal with that?
I think I just had to. I realized that after a couple of months, my health got better. I realized, as you said, that it wasn't. Things were different. Things hadn't moved on. I had changed, and other things hadn't. And I just sort of focused my head to say I'm going to have to bang on it here regardless. Bought an old house and put my energies into fixing that up. I wanted something stable, something that didn't move to focus on.
Yeah.
The bike got parked in the garage and got forgotten about for quite a few years. So I had to make a determined decision to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit around mostly sort of fuzzy things going on in my head. I'm going to direct my attentions into focusing on one thing and getting life sorted, you know. Yeah. And as you say, just fitting in with the groove.
Mm-hmm. I found like setting myself goals, sights, little challenges, because I'd spent a couple of years before my trip constantly planning the trip, and that was the end goal, was to go on the trip. And then once you're on the trip, the end goal is to make it happen, isn't it? It's to find fuel, it's to find food, it's to find somewhere to stay. And make the trip work. So once I was home, it was like I needed something to fix my mind on, to give myself goals. So I just remember having like umpteen, just an idea would pop in your head and you'd be like, yeah, let's go for that. And I'd just throw everything at that. So like, right, okay, that's not going to work. Next one.
No, and I think that's part of the disappointment once you get to where you were going to. Once you get to Sydney, you think, well, what am I going to do now? And you spent the last year or several years planning for the moment of arriving in Sydney, and all of a sudden you're there, and there's no future for you because you've done what you intended to do.
Well, yeah. Now what?
So it's now what, So this time last year I got to Sydney, I was happy enough because I had other. I knew what the feeling was, and I knew how to address it. And what you do when you finish one journey is plan the next. Basically. Yeah. So absolutely. I suppose that's probably the answer to the question: is you finish once you get to the destination, you plan your next journey.
That's it. Yeah. Set your sights on the next thing.
Yeah.
Right, cheers for that, Andy. Thank you very much for your questions, pal. Next one, Charlie Callard. Evening, gents. Hope you both fit in well. Well, this looks an epic adventure with a hell of a story. I'll definitely be getting the audiobook soon. So my questions to you both. On your darkest of days of travel, what was the inspiration or drive to keep going?
Staying alive.
Yeah, you had it a whole different level than me. I thought I had a few dodgy moments, but reading your book, gee whiz. I mean, you kind of...
No.
You seem to have umpteen different civil wars and just loads of issues coming down through Africa. It just seemed to be an incredibly volatile experience.
Well, the beauty about the trip was that if I'd planned to go down through Africa, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. Because it was impossible on paper to do.
Yeah.
Uganda was in civil war, Sudan was in civil war, the Kenya-Tanzania border was closed, Zambia was dodgy, Rhodesia was in civil war, Australia or South Africa was at apartheid. So you just only a madman would have decided to do that. The only reason I did it was I didn't know any better. Stupidity gets you through a lot sometimes.
Again, folks, we can't go. We can't cover it in this podcast. You're gonna have to read the book or listen to it. It's boggling. They're gonna make a film about this one day, mate. They will make a film about it, and people will watch it and go, "That's too far fetched." Bollocks, that never happened. Yeah. So for you, just pure survival. That was the drive.
Pretty much. I think you get stuck in this place. You know that there's nobody else who's going to get you out of there but yourself. So you got to get yourself out of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas you live in the UK. If your car breaks down, you call the AA. You ring your friends, or the police come by and give you help. Whatever you don't. But your wheel falls off in Africa. You got to get it sorted.
You got to deal with it. Yeah, absolutely. Especially then, because you didn't have. I remember when it was going a bit wrong in Mauritania, and I really struggled to get any supplies from the locals. They seem to hate me for some reason, and I can only put it down to I did my trip on a.
Did you find out a lot of it?
Yeah, everyone's like that. I did it on a Suzuki GSX-R 1000, and my bike was covered in like company logos. I mean, I wasn't like a massive sponsored trip, but companies paid like £100 to get their logo put on the bike, and that's part how I funded it. And I was doing it in leathers as well, and some of my leathers had some patches on them as well, like a race suit. Yeah. And I kind of think it was the only time I experienced any negativity was Mauritania, and I can only put it down to it was the bike and what I looked like. It seemed to invoke a really negative reaction from people. It's like shop owners wouldn't sell me water, they wouldn't sell me bread. So, like, I was going into the Sahara with no water and no food. So obviously, literally the first day, I snapped the subframe, and I ended up just like in a heap in the desert in my leather suit cooking. And I pretty much think I wouldn't have survived that if it wasn't for this old boy, South African guy, was riding a Euro, a sidecar unit. He was riding his Euro he'd just divorced his wife. So he was riding from Scotland back to, I think, Cape Town, actually, in South Africa, because he'd always wanted to do it. So he thought, oh, fuck it, I can do it now. So he happened to be just coming behind me, and he pulled up behind me and literally kicked me in the arse and told me to get up and get on the bike. And I buddied with him through Mauritania from then. And would see that when we went to shops, people were all smiles and would serve him no problem. And with me, people were throwing their sandals at me. And he was like, well, that's a really weird reaction. But what was my point on that? I can't remember what my point was. But well,
it was a personal problem, obviously.
yeah. I wasn't welcome in Mauritania for some reason. But,
I think, I have heard of various travelers having more trouble in West Africa than East Africa, which I would put down to maybe the language. A lot of French, you get French and Spanish. It's just more difficult to communicate with the locals there.
Yeah.
Whereas in East Africa, it's more of the old British colonies. So British. English is more the language of choice. Most people speak a bit of English, so
right.
I think it's easier to communicate with people no matter what level they're at. I think that's possibly part of it.
And I'm a former policeman, believe it or not, in London, and we get taught about conflict resolution and that your action affects their reaction, which affects your action. And I remember, I really do think it was because I was probably so on edge, like my threat assessments through the roof when I went into, when you go into Mauritania, literally through the border, you're after the first, I think it's customs. After that, you've got like a kilometre of desert to get through to get to the police bit of the border before you're in, and it's a minefield. It's an open minefield with a couple of tracks through it, and I ended up stuck in a minefield at one point. Literally, that's you're in Mauritania. That's your first reaction to it. So from then on, I was just literally wired, and I think that probably, well, it definitely had a detrimental effect because I'm straight away up. Yeah, I'm up to here when I'm meeting people and dealing with people, and that's only going to have a negative impact, isn't it? So I think it irks me to have been beaten. So, we were chatting about
possibly been brought up in Northern Ireland in the 70s.
Yeah,
probably gave me a bit of a heads up on dealing with getting in and out of conflict situations, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and knowing this guy doesn't like me. How can I get him to like me? How can I get myself out of this situation which could go wrong? You can get the vibe. This is not a good situation.
Yeah.
How can we direct this in a better direction? So it probably gave me a bit of a head start on that, and maybe not been so sort of paranoid or if people sense you're scared, it's not a good thing. If they're aggressive, they'll feed on it. If they're not aggressive, they'll just try and rip you off, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important to try and look brave but not be cocky, even if you're shitting yourself,
Yeah. I remember, like, for me, I would never change how things went in West Africa, because when I got the option to restart the trip and go again, it gave me a completely different mindset to it all, in that, no matter what happens, I'm doing this. Whether I'm dragging the bike back, carrying the bike back, or we're both coming back in a box, we're going to do this. We're just going to keep going. And I think I was just, as you just said, I was so much more open to anything and everyone. I don't ever remember having that same feeling of threat and impending doom like I had coming into Mauritania. I just didn't have that for the rest of the trip. It was just like, right, okay, we'll just see what happens today. What's going to happen in the next hour? And that 100%.
Well, once you have that heavy duty antagonism against you, I think that's is not important after that. That's your level of I can cope with that. So I think that's not guy's got a gun, who gives a shit,
Yeah.
Put that away, stop being silly,
Which sounds ridiculous, but that is what it's like, isn't it? It's just like, oh, well, that's just what they do. Okay.
Stop giving me a hard time,
Yeah. Charlie says, on the flip side, what's been your highest or favourite moment from your travels? And it doesn't need to be just that one trip, like from all your travels. What's been your like top moment?
Don't know if I can say that over on air, can
I? I won't tell if you want.
well, so many ups and downs. Getting to South Africa, I really enjoyed South Africa. Not just arriving in South Africa so much as being there, because it's a beautiful country, and having got there overland when the country was pretty much closed off to Westerners and Africa generally. It was, it was very hard to get to, very isolated. I got a great reaction there, so I really enjoyed that. And probably similar in Australia as well. More recently, they've got such a people who appreciate you having made such a big effort to get to their country.
Yeah,
they're very welcoming and give you a good time. So probably those two moments, I suppose. Not so much a destination, but just enjoying being in the countries that I've arrived in.
Yeah,
but there's so many ups and downs. Hard to say
absolutely.
that.
I think I remember getting to Vladivostok in Eastern Russia and just thinking, oh, you're feeling like I've actually accomplished something. When you're crossing Russia, it's all road. It was all road that I did there. Well, where they're, they have little sections where it's like trail riding. But I remember just thinking, I can do this. Like, yeah, okay, right, I've done something out the norm now. Russia, tick, bring it on. And then like working way down through Southeast Asia, getting to Dili. I remember getting to Dili and just thinking, yeah, I think I can do this now. Like we're almost, you do Dili, you ship to Australia, then across to South America, and you're like, right, okay, yeah, we'll bring it on. Let's just deal with it. What's happening?
What's next? Give me another problem.
Yeah. But as you said, like, I think once you've dealt with what is the worst thing that's happened to you so far, well, that's now your gauge, isn't it? It's like, well, if it doesn't get anywhere near that, okay, I can deal with this, no problem.
That's average,
so,
I think it's up to that's not bad. I think but worse than that is bad,
Yeah.
So it does,
absolutely.
Which is quite dangerous as well, because you can get a bit carried away with yourself. Complicity. Say, I can do anything, I can survive it. People point guns at me, I don't give a shit,
Yeah.
But no, you can't get a bit cocky on it.
Yeah. Charlie, cheers for those questions, mate. Top questions. Next one, David McCracken. Hi, Chris. What a pleasure to be able to ask you some thought-provoking questions. One. Was your trip driven by the urge to travel or an urge to get away from Belfast during what was undoubtedly a difficult time for our city?
Both. Although not so much to get away, because when you're brought up in a country, brought up in a city, you don't know anything better. You don't know anything. It was like we were talking before. My life in Belfast was average. It was what my norm was.
Yeah.
So there was bombs going off and people getting shot, whatever. So a teenager in Belfast, I'd seen things on TV, and obviously you wasn't like that everywhere, but that was my average.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose I was lucky. I was brought up in some middle class family. It didn't sort of suffer the father's business got blown up several times, lost a few friends.
I was going to cover that, yeah.
Wasn't that bad. I didn't really have a hard time compared to most, so it wasn't a big deal, but it was sort of pretty average. But I did want to, it was more to get away and see what's going on else in the world,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you're just sort of in a blasé fashion. My father's business got blown up a few times. I mean, was it like 3 times it got blown up?
Oh, dozens of times, to be honest, over the years.
Dozens? Jeez.
Well, the IRA seemed to have this thing against furniture shops. I don't know whether it was G-Plan or Parker Knoll, whatever they didn't like, but they seemed to blow up furniture shops with great frequency, I think, because it burnt quite well in those days.
Yeah, I suppose so,
It seemed to be a favourite target.
God.
But yeah.
I mean, geez. I mean, I'm aware of the troubles, but obviously the only experience I ever had of the troubles was the TV growing up. I was born 76, so, I was aware it was going on. And obviously I saw the bombs going off in London on the TV. But then as a copper coming into London, the threat had pretty much passed by the time I was down here, sort of 2002 when I joined.
Yeah.
But then we got the other end of it, sort of 2005 when Al Qaeda, detonated the bombs on the tube and everything. It was like, oh, hang on a minute.
Took over, yeah.
It's all got very real all of a sudden here. So yeah, it was sort of. Thankfully, I never got caught up in any explosions. But you know, it was one of my mates was the copper that got stabbed at Westminster, and ended up the stabbings on London Bridge. I ended up working on that as well. So you know, you do experience it, but I can't imagine. I can't imagine that being your day-to-day life. You know, in the Troubles, with it actually impacting on your life.
It's probably easier as a day-to-day life, as I say, because we didn't know any better, because that was just normal life. If I lived somewhere else, it came there first. In fact, I remember taking my daughter to the museum and seeing the museum had a big exhibit about the Troubles, and I thought, Jesus, I'm in the museum already, you know?
Yeah.
That was a few years back.
Yeah.
And certainly now you see movies like Belfast and 71, there's maybe on Netflix the other day, but about the Troubles, you realise it was a pretty shitty time to be about. And our school was in the middle of Belfast, so we did. I mean, I would be horrified sending my daughter into school like that now. It was my parents didn't like me that much or something. It just seemed to be a terrible thing to do, to send your kids in the middle of a war zone to go to school, you know?
It's crazy to think of it like that.
They had four of us. They could afford to lose a couple of them, maybe. I don't know. A couple of spares, as Prince Harry says, you know. But, it just seemed to be more acceptable or whatever. It's just what we did, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that, because that undoubtedly helped you deal with what happened on the trip. Then, as you said, because your gauge is already at a totally different level. Your normal is already out with most people's normal.
Yeah, my danger gauge, as I call it, was quite so high up compared to most people anyway.
Yeah.
You know, alarm checkpoints to people pointing guns. It didn't really bother me too much, because I done in Belfast, I knew that the guys behind the guns were just kids themselves. You know, they don't really want to kill you. They just want to do their job and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Generally.
You always have to chuck that in, don't you? Generally, because you do get the odd wrong, for sure. Everywhere. David also says, question 2, what is best, red tato or yellow tato? What's this? Is this some sort of sauce? What's red tato or yellow tato?
Tato crisps, I presume. Tato typically is basically your Golden Wonder. Your English people have Golden Wonder, which obviously aren't anything. It's like our potato crisps. And yellow is the best, because that's cheese and onion.
Right. Oh, okay, got you. So yellow's the best, is it? Cheese and onion.
Yeah.
He says, last one. Do you follow? There's plenty of them. Do you follow the Irish road racing scene? If so, which event do you most enjoy?
Probably make myself a bit unpopular by saying the last road race I went to see was in Northwest. We used to enjoy going up to it, riding up the coast and having a great blast when we were kids.
Yeah.
But I remember, I think it was Tommy Heron got killed. He was the top rider at that stage, because he just something went wrong with the bike and hit a lamppost. I just thought, this is crazy. It's crazy sport, and I never went back again, to be honest.
Wow.
I just think the road racing has grown. The bikes have grown out of road racing. One of the guys I met when I got home from South America, it was got home from Africa actually, was Stanley Woods. If you remember, was a big Norton racer back before the war.
Right.
And he rode Moto Guzzi's as well in the afternoon with him. And he'd got a couple of fingers missing. He was pretty beat up. He was about in his 80s. But he was riding the races when they were going at sort of 80 miles an hour on the same roads that they're doing 180 miles an hour. And I just think it's a bit crazy, to be honest. But that's just me. I'd hate to see them stop. I think it's a great tradition and all the rest of it. I love it. But I just think for young guys to be hurling themselves around those roads at those speeds, it's just crazy.
I agree. I do agree, but I also think if people want to do that, who is anyone else to tell them they can't do it? You know, I'm very much in that mindset. Everybody involved knows the risks, and they still choose to do it. So if the option is there to do it, it should never be taken away. I don't think you can't
teenage boys and boys in their 20s are incredibly stupid when it comes to things like that.
Yeah.
As you and I remember.
Yeah, but if you stop them road racing, I'm sure they'll find something else to do, won't they?
Speaking as a sad old git, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I hate to say it's stopping. The Ulster Grand Prix looks like it's stopped at COVID and it doesn't. It's never got started again.
Yeah,
that's terribly sad. You know, it's a great tradition. I love the whole razzmatazz of it, but I just think that when the races started on the bikes they were basically like go-karts compared to what they're riding now, you know.
That's 200 odd mile an hour now, isn't it? Insane.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Totally.
I remember experiencing the Isle of Man TT for the first time, and I love my speed on a bike, and it never there was no negativity about speed or about like the road race, and I couldn't wait to experience it. But I remember standing at the bottom of Bray Hill, and the bikes came by, and they're doing about 180 odd when they go by there at the bottom of Bray Hill, and they almost lift the manhole cover, you know, as they go by. This pressure wave hits you. And I just remember thinking to myself, if they crash, they're dead. And they're not just dead, they're missed. Yeah. It's like, and that feeling hit me. And I was just like, oh God, I don't want to witness that. I don't want to see that. You know, like I've seen road accidents. I don't want to have this in front of me. And it did, it changed, not in a negative way, because I still love watching road racing and I don't think it should be stopped. But it did change my attitude towards it. It was like, fuck, they're not fucking about here. This isn't playtime. This is proper. This is like life or death if you get this wrong. And I hadn't really comprehended that, I don't think, before.
And I think before, when watching road races, before the people were getting killed and whatever, but whenever Tommy Heron, who was the top guy at that time, I thought, well, if he can't do it without getting killed, who can, you know? And the Dunlops are the same, you know, they're still out, you know, suffered so much. They were top of the game, but still getting killed.
I went to where is it Estonia where Joey came off?
Estonia, yeah.
I went to pay my respects, and it doesn't even look like a corner. I remember looking at it and thinking, how has anyone crashed here? Let alone like the best road racer on the planet at the time. And you just think, it's almost like one of those things that comes into your head where you go, do you know, when your time's there, your time's there. It's going to get you. What, you know, when that clock ticks and it's your time. You know,
I can't concentration or whatever it was, you know.
Yes. How?
No, it's not a lack of skill to get around that corner. It was just something obtuse, like a lack of concentration or something on the road or whatever. Something silly just happened. But that was the end of his life, sort of thing, you know. So so as I say, it's another topic of conversation altogether, isn't
it? It is, yeah. And I was going to ask. Tell me if you're not interested. But like, do you believe in fate? Because like, you know, on your trip, I remember on my trip, there seemed to just be things will go wrong, things will go wrong, things will go wrong, and just at the point where you thought, I'm foobarred, like I'm done. This is it. I can't see a way out of, you know, if it's your breakdown or whatever it is. Someone seems to turn up. Something seems to happen, and you know, next thing you know, it's a lift in your spirits, and you're moving again. Something happens. Just something happens to keep it going. Do you believe in fate?
No, I believe it. You'll make it happen. Generally, you'll make it happen. If you try and make it happen, it'll happen. I'm not very religious. I think certainly luck has a lot to do with it. You can be lucky and not lucky. Things will happen. It won't happen. But generally, I think you'll make it happen yourself.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a positive attitude that you're going to make it happen, there's more chance it will happen.
That's true. Yeah.
But maybe that is fate. I don't know if you perceive it, but you're making it. You're generating the positive waves to make it happen, and then by luck, by the statistics, whatever, something will come right, you know?
Yeah.
Something's gone wrong to put you in that position in the first place.
I suppose it's like what we spoke about. Like what we spoke about earlier, you know, you just don't give up, do you? Because it's not over if you don't give up. It's only over when you give up, I suppose. So
well, you can't give up because you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. You can't give up.
You've got no option, do you?
No, you're not going to stay there the rest of your life.
But then, sorry, go on.
Well, I think, as I say, in the West, in the sort of civilized world, you can give up, and somebody will take it over for you and look after you, and take you to the hospital and sort you out. You know, there's always something. There's always a backup plan. But if you're in the third world countries where there's no backup plan, it's just yourself. You just got to sort it out.
Yeah. And even more so when you did it, because there was no such thing as the internet. There's no such thing as mobiles.
No.
Whereas, even when I did it, I had a mobile on me at all times. And even if I had no signal, you wouldn't need to go too far into society to find somewhere that would have Wi-Fi, and definitely easier now for sure. Right, next one, Patrick Collum. Hello and Happy New Year to you both. Apologies, it's just getting back in. Oh, that's all he's saying. Sorry, Patrick. He's just saying he's getting back into the swing of the year. All right. Hi, how you doing, Patrick? All right. Last one on Patreon. You're getting a what? Hi, guys. Chris, I loved your book. Do you still have the Le Mans? Well, yes. It's in Sydney, isn't it?
It's Melbourne, yeah.
Oh, Melbourne, sorry. Right.
It's not like a year off.
He says, do you think it would be possible to complete your journey today with the same level of planning and resources, or lack of? Interesting.
I think it's easier in a way to do it with the same level of lack of resources. Is the world a more peaceful place than it was before? Some things haven't changed. Israel hasn't changed. The Middle East hasn't changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
Africa's certainly got a lot easier. The roads are easier. I think there's a road across most of the Sahara now.
Yeah.
The Chinese are building railways. Africa's certainly a lot more civilized. I was there. It was just coming out of the post-colonial collapse of society, basically. In those days, dictators had started draining all the money. They're still doing that in a lot of places in Africa, but certainly a lot more civilized now. Well, I suppose the answer is I did it. I just did it last year over 6 months, over the 2 years on the same bike. So it's a pretty close sort of similar comparison between the two trips, although they were different areas of the world.
Yeah.
And Asia's a lot easier than Africa in those days. I don't know. It's still up to yourself on how much you can. You still, the individual problems are going to occur with borders, with meeting people, getting robbed, running out of gas, whatever it is. A lot of the same problems are still there. But some things have got easier. The internet certainly made life a lot easier, more pleasant, and taken a lot of the magic away from it. I suppose, in the.
Because you've got a way out, don't you? There's a much more readily accessible way out or source of help. Yeah.
And you could, of course, decide to do the trip without your mobile phone, without your GPS and all the rest, but that would just be really stupid.
Imagine what that would be like today, though. If you didn't have a phone with you, if you just went old school, like a paper.
I was thinking about that at the time, and it just would be nuts, because it would be, as I say, there's a road across the Sahara now through Sudan, Sudan, and it would be a wee bit saying, I'm going to drive this across the sand, even though the road's over there.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the trip across the sand. It's going to take me a week instead of 5 hours, Yeah. It would just be, you'd only be pretending to be good, to be doing it. So you'd be doing a Top Gear journey, Clarkson does his journeys with the three of them are crossing the desert, whatever it is, when it actually there's 24 cameramen and everybody else standing beside them. So
I've got Charlie Borman on here in a couple of weeks, actually. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few questions from people around that.
Don't mention my name.
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean, you do what you can, and more respect to them. They did a whole. You're a film star. You're Ewan McGregor.
Yeah,
you've got to take all those precautions and everything else, and design your trip for your own sensibility, your own person.
Absolutely. And they were creating a TV show around that trip. And what I say to people is, without them doing that, despite the fact, you and like Ted Simon and Elspeth Beard and Jackie and all these other people, Simon and Lisa, all these amazing people have done and continue to do these stunning trips. Despite that, the vast majority of people out there only know about overland motorcycle travel because of Long Way Round. It brought it to the forefront. I didn't know about any of you guys. I didn't know about Ted Simon until I saw Long Way Round, and it was Long Way Round that lit the fire for me to go, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And then I found out about
yeah. It's been great to have done that, because I've been able to make it raising public awareness of it. You know, one of the lovely things about my journey 2 years ago when it started, I met a girl called an old lady. She was called Mary Siver, who had ridden around the world on a BSA Bantam in the 70s and 80s.
Uh-huh.
I met her at an overland show and overland event just outside Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, hang on a minute. She's actually the lady that I read about when I was 16.
Yeah.
Who gave me the inspiration to start my journey in 1979.
Fantastic.
She's passed away last year, but it's lovely to meet her.
Oh wow.
Just so many years later, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that fate or was that just luck? Whatever it was, who knows? You
know? The older I get, the more open I am to things that were just a closed door to me before. You know, everything was just black and white and logical to me before. But I do find myself now pondering and thinking, is there more to this? Is there something else going on? Because it just sometimes the way things work out, you're like, that seems to be more of a coincidence. More than a coincidence. I don't know. I don't know. The logical part of your brain just goes, shut up, you make your own luck, get on with it. But I don't know, sometimes.
I'm just turning into an old cynic as I get older.
We're also getting asked, did you ever find out if the Colombian pharmaceutical businessman who let you camp on his land survived the cartel wars?
No, I never found out that. I don't think I got his name. It would be interesting to find out who he was and how he made us funny.
Yeah. Again, folks, you got to read the book. You just got to read the book. There's so many of these sort of chance meetings and things. You can draw your own conclusions as to who that was. If you were to do a round the world trip today, what bike would you do it on?
Moto Guzzi Le Mans.
Yeah, that's it. Why use anything else? Yeah. Why did you take the Moto Guzzi?
Because I was too stubborn. I reckon it was the best motorbike in the world in the 70s. It was the hottest bike out there. I'd had a BMW before that and I realized that was more of a touring bike. And I was going to buy another BMW. I was too stubborn because I wasn't getting a decent price from a Moto Guzzi. So I thought, bugger you, I'll take it instead.
Yeah. So
I put a screen on it and a couple of top boxes and did everything that BMW would ever do, only look better, look a lot cooler at the time.
And a quarter of the price.
A quarter of the price, yes.
He asks, what 3 pieces of advice would you both give to potential round-the-world travellers? That's a question to both of us.
Oh, God. 3 pieces of advice. Don't overthink it would be my main one. After being involved in a couple of the Overland show and the Adventure Riders show, people have got so much thought goes into what their bike they're going to take, what equipment they're going to take, what they're going to wear, what they're going to. You know, it's all just nonsense. Just get on your bike and go. You know, it doesn't matter. You get a Moto Guzzi Le Mans or BMW, whatever. You know, a Honda monkey bike. Just get on your bike. People go around the world on a scooter and a Honda 50 or whatever.
Everything you can think of. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's only 10,000 miles to India. You know, what bike can you? What bike can you do 10,000 miles on? You know,
that's the crazy thing, isn't it? It's like it's not as far as you think. It's not. It doesn't need to be as big a journey as you think. It's crazy. I remember getting to Australia. I know I didn't take 43 years, but I remember getting to Australia and it had been a year and a bit, I think. And then you suddenly realise 24 hours I can be home. You know what I mean? It's like you're not really that far away in the great scheme of things. I definitely agree with you. People plan,
it's
over
not
plan.
The bike. You're going on a motorbike, but it's not the bike that's important. The bike is just the means of getting the journey done. You know, it's like going into town on the bus. It's not the bus that's important. It's the fact you're going into town.
Yeah.
You know, the bike's just the means of getting you there. So you want a bike that's not going to break down, blah, blah, it's going to be comfortable, the rest of it. But people just overthink the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you know Jacques Lucassen, the Dutch guy that did like a 4 or 5 year trip around the world on, was it an R1 or a Fireblade? Can't remember what he did it on. But that was in the 90s. Did you know about
I
him?
haven't heard of him. No, no.
Incredible guy, incredible. Well, he was at a hub event, Horizons Unlimited. So I was at
Yeah,
that before I did my trip, and I think I was given a talk about my planned trip. And I remember being in the bar afterwards, and Jack was there, and he was a bit of a hero of mine. So he was a bit pissed because he likes a beer, and I'd had a few. So I got chatting with him, and I told him about my plans, and he just beamed with a big smile. And I said, do you think the bike will make it? Will I be able to do it? And he just looked at me and he said, just take the bike that makes you smile, because he said any bike
yeah,
can break down. Any bike is just
yeah,
two wheels and an engine. He says, a bike is as you just said, a bike is a bike. So you want the bike that you have the connection with, the bike that makes you smile, because at the end of the day, that's all you're going to have at some points.
yeah,
And I'm so glad I listened to him, and he's totally right. Because when at the times when I was just feeling, quite low and really shite, I could look across out my tent and there's my bike, and you just think, that's my
yeah.
bike. I've ridden that from home, and it was just
Been there.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I love
yeah,
the fact people would go, "Oh, you'll never do that." People still say that to me now. "Oh, that bike will never make it." And you're like, "Finished
yeah.
11 years ago, You
And
must
people
get
said
that."
that to me in 79. Yeah, 79.
Exactly.
I've done it.
Yeah,
And I did
exactly.
it 40 years later on a 40-year-old motorbike.
I love the fact that you did it again on the same bike. That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, you're
Had to
totally
be.
right. People overplan, um, put too much thought into whatever bike it is, and as we just said, just don't give up. Loads of people say, "Oh, I would love to do that," or I want to do a world trip." Most people will never do it, will they? Because it's not. They just want to do it. They don't need to do it. And for me, I think
No.
that's the big difference. You have to. It's got to be in your soul. Like, you have to really want to do that trip for it to make it happen. That's
Yeah, you
my
gotta.
view.
I mean, it took me 5 years to plan it, and then it all
Mhm.
fell to shit whenever we
Yeah,
left. So, but
yeah,
it wasn't going to stop.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then this
yeah,
time, whenever Liam couldn't go on, I wasn't going to stop.
yeah. Never give up.
Just got to have that
There you go.
mentality. Just go on.
Right, Chris, that's all the Patreon questions, mate. But there's a couple over on Instagram. Have you got time for them?
Yep.
Apologies for interrupting, folks, but a quick shout out for this week's sponsors, who this week are Ultimate Add-ons. Bit of spiel to read out for them. Ultimate Add-ons are the premium manufacturer of mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for motorcycles. With a kit for any bike and a proven track record of creating products that keep your devices safe, secure, and easily accessible, the Ultimate Add-ons product range is ideal for any rider, from the commuter to the round-the-world adventurer. Why shell out on an expensive GPS system when you could use your smartphone, keeping it charged and within reach to take photos of your travels at the same time? Ultimate Add-ons waterproof, shockproof, and dustproof tough cases are available for all flagship smartphone models and are designed by riders for riders. Find out why Ride Magazine gives Ultimate Add-ons their coveted Best Buy certification. Keep riding this winter with Ultimate Add-ons. It's all about the journey. Now, if you head to Ultimate Add-ons, links down below, it's just Ultimate with ADDONS, all one word, ultimateaddons.com. Use the code TeapotOne, that's Teapot with ONE at the end, TeapotOne, then you'll get 10% off their entire product range. That also works for Dango Design UK as well. I've never had any vibration issues with the cases that I use. I've got one for my iPhone, and I use the Hex sort of strap. It's in the pedal cycle section. It's just like a ratchet strap, which allows you to pretty much attach it to absolutely anything, and then your case attaches to that. So a massive thank you to Ultimate Add-ons for their continued support. We are also sponsored by the Influencer Store. Now, Roger and Charlotte over at the Influencer Store, they've been doing my merch for TeapotOne.com for quite a few years now. I used to use the standard sort of print-on-demand type web-based ones. It was nice and easy to do that, but the quality of the products were 2 or 3 washes and they fell apart. They'd lose their shape, and I wasn't really happy for my brand to be associated with that sort of quality. So I was on the hunt for some better quality merch. I saw Richie Vida stuff and thought, that's really good. Nice quality, really nice print, like the designs. And he pointed me in the direction of Roger and Charlotte over at the Influencer Store. And they've been doing my merch ever since. I get the feedback from you guys when you spend your hard-earned money on the merch and you seem to be happy with it. If you're not, please do let me know and we can feed it back. But I've got some spiel to read out from them. The Influencer Store helps you build your brand big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design. And there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at influencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. And lastly, a massive shout out to all of you over in the clan over at patreon.com/TeapotOne. Could not do this without all your support, folks. We've got a fantastic community going on over there. Everyone's so supportive of each other. We do the ride outs, we do the meetups, and obviously you guys get first choice for the questions on the podcast. Thank you so much for all your support. I hope you're all still enjoying it. Let's get back to the podcast. Right, okay, we'll fire across to Instagram. I think there's only 3, over on Instagram for us to get through. There's loads of people saying they've read the book or they can't wait to read the book and looking forward to it. It's 3 actual questions. So that's at TeapotOne Insta is my tag. I'll leave Chris's as well down below, so make sure you check them out and give them a follow. First one, a Simon Jacqueline. One question I always wonder about is financing these long journeys in faraway places. Food, fuel, repairs, clothing, etc. Do you work locally for a short period and then move on? I'm just interested. Thanks for recommendation. I will get it. I also have a Guzzi and I love that too. Yeah, so funding the trip. Did you get the funds together before you went, or was it?
Well, as I said earlier, yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare because I was only been working part-time, saving the money up. As I said, it was about $1,000, which is worked out was about $5,000 now, which, as you can imagine, isn't an awful lot to travel around the world on.
No.
The journey I did to Australia recently last year, I'm substantially better off, as you say. So I could afford to stay in hotels and not worry about petrol. Go to restaurants. I didn't do much camping. Camping was more or less as an emergency.
Yeah.
So I did spoil myself a bit more. But yeah, it's you're going to be away for whatever time. You're not going to be earning any money. You're going to be spending money. It depends how high on the hog you want to live.
Yeah.
But money is, they say money isn't everything, but it's pretty much everything when you're on the road because you can't go far without it.
Yeah.
And if you can't find us, you do get a harder time if you're poor, if you don't have money, if you can't afford a nice hotel or a hotel at all. Life's going to be harder for you. The more money you have, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a horrible thing to say, but it's the way it is.
Absolutely. There's people like. Have you heard of Nathan Millward?
Yeah.
So cracking lad.
He rode
the postie bike, the 110cc Aussie postie bike. Well, he rode that from Sydney back to the UK, and I think his budget was something like $7 or $8,000. But he was literally, sleeping in bushes and living off of. I think at one stage it was one 99p cheeseburger a day. That was his rations. Yeah. So you can do it at the literally bottom level. You're just getting by. Yeah. But then there's other people.
You can do it for a lot less than you need. Yeah. I mean, so places like Iran. I think petrol was 10 cents a gallon, 10 cents a litre.
Yeah.
Hotels are like $30 for a Holiday Inn type thing,
Yeah.
$30. So you can live a lot cheaper in these places than you can, and travel a lot cheaper than you can in the West.
Yeah, absolutely.
But probably the last trip I did, flights were the most expensive part of it.
And you can certainly work along the way, and it's never been easier, especially now. If you work, if you've got access to the internet and you need the internet for work, then you can work pretty much anywhere in the world these days. So there's no reason why you couldn't do that, and you can even turn your trip into a source of income these days. With social media and everything that's out there, as long as you can develop your brand and get a following. Like we had Bobby Bolton and Marie on here from One Life Truck It. They're currently driving a big truck to Australia at the moment, and Bobby set off himself from the UK, just him and his dog basically, with no real sort of following, and in a matter of weeks he's now got 200 odd or 250,000 people following on his Instagram. Well, I mean, he's now
Incredible.
becoming a brand, so you can do that, but there's pros and cons for that because if it sort of doesn't become your trip anymore, you need to make sure you keep hold of your baby, you know what I mean, and don't sell the soul out of it because
Yeah,
then you're just going to be in the
I think it's
pocket
sort
to
of
sponsors.
spoils the trip doing that to an extent,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're just working to
yeah,
publicize yourself.
yeah,
I
yeah. What are
remember
you actually getting away
talked about
from?
when I talked about taking the bike to Australia the second time. I spoke to a couple of TV companies and said, "Yeah, we could bring a cameraman with you to the
Mm,
Ian McGregor type thing." And I thought, "No, I don't want to do that." Because you can imagine driving a little village
yeah,
with yourself and a lot of cameras behind you. You think, it's just not going to be the same.
no,
It's not going to be a journey. It's going to be a film
yeah,
or a documentary, whatever.
yeah,
So it
true.
depends what you want out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the way a lot of people do it, Simon, and the way I did it as well is I had some backing. I managed to pick up a sponsor that basically would pay for about half of what I needed, and then the rest of it, yeah, you put your head down at work and you do as much overtime as you can to save. I remortgaged, I sold everything I owned, and
Yeah.
it still, wasn't quite enough for my trip. So, you credit card it up and you just swallow it when you get home. It's your
Yeah.
trip. You have to figure out the
Uh,
way that you're going to fund it.
And if you have the time, if you can get somewhere like the States, you can get a job or
Yep.
make some
Yep.
money at the time. I think that's a great way of doing it because by stopping and working in a place, you're getting to know the people, getting to know the
Yeah.
place, and getting to know the culture.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble is you can only do that places like, if you're in India or something like that, you can't do that because you'd only be getting pennies rather than
Yeah.
pounds to
Yeah.
make money. But if you're traveling through the States or somewhere, Europe, you can do that. Stop, make some money. Great.
Mm.
Really builds the trip, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think, Simon, you just have to figure out what your trip is to you, what you want from the trip, and if you're prepared to work along the way, great. If you're not, then you've got to source the money somehow before you go and make sure that's that. It'll never be enough. You'll always need
No.
more, but it's part of the joy of it. You
But
just deal with it.
and part of the joy is, I mean, looking back, it's like it was hell of the time, but part of the times in Africa certainly was went hungry, went thirsty, and
Yeah,
it's part of the trip because you don't do that at home. When's the last
yeah,
you think you say you're starving, you miss your lunch.
yeah.
Well, actually, you're starving, you haven't eaten for a couple of days. You're
Mm,
thirsty when you can't swallow, the back of your throat's dry, But
yeah.
whereas we think we're thirsty, we just need another beer. So it does give you a different perspective in life.
Yeah. I never experienced that on my trip. I maybe went a day without some food. Um, and did I go? I always managed to find something to drink. Although I remember drinking out a waterfall in Laos and really regretting that later that night when, when, when basically my arse just exploded out of me for the next few days. And I got
I
dengue fever
remember,
as well. So yeah, that might have been from there.
uh, I remember being really thirsty in Africa, like really, really thirsty. And the guy gave me a tin mug with muddy water in it. Looking at it like,
Yeah,
am I going to drink this or not? I drank it,
yeah.
because
You
the
have to.
alternative was worse.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, I remember that this waterfall, really fast flowing, like a proper waterfall, fast flowing water.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd been
drink that.
drinking like Gatorade. I had a big bottle of like Gatorade strapped across the front of my bike. So I'd finished that. And I remember just filling the bottle up from the waterfall. And it was crystal clear
Yeah,
water. Crystal
yeah.
clear. And I remember drinking it and just thinking, this is the best water I've ever had. And wow, it got its
For
revenge on
about an
me.
hour.
Yeah, she was. Did it get its revenge on me? Right, the next one, Uncle Bob's Bike Life. He just asks why Moto Guzzi. Well, we've covered that. Last one, Real Schwerty. I haven't read the book. How do you make a living along? Oh, there we go. Same thing. How do you make a living along the way? Will you get a pension back? Will you get a pension back home or in any country at all because you've not, you're not working, I suppose, or is he now depending on income from the book and event talks? Yeah, but I mean, well, your trip was like a year and a half, wasn't it? 2 years, so you've had
Yeah,
40 odd years to pay into the system.
figure a few quid since. Yeah, so
Yeah,
paid my
yeah,
pension. I think it's very difficult to get the odd person to make money out of a trip, but as we covered, that's not why you should be doing it. I don't think, anyway, personally.
Hmm.
Uh, is it Itchy Butch seems to have put 1 million followers. She must be making a nice living out of it, but
She's got to be doing very well. Yeah, yeah.
Got to be doing very well. If you think you're going to make money out of it, forget about it. Do it for the fun, not for the money.
Aye.
Make some money before you go.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Or else get plenty of credit cards, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there's very few people out there who it becomes a way of life. You know, there's Simon and Lisa Thomas, but even they've had 3-4 years off because of COVID. Obviously, they ended up back in the UK, and they've been nearly 20 years on the road. You know, before COVID came along. But there's not many people out there that travel for a prolonged period like that, where it actually becomes life. So most folk out there, you know, you can swallow a couple of years out of your life to go and live your dream, and, you know, I would say get out your system, but you won't. It'll still be there when you get back.
Yeah. You're indoctrinated.
Yeah. It's weird because I remember, like, it's not like this epiphanal thing, is it? Or not, epiphanal's the wrong word, but it's not like this miracle cure for any sort of issues in life that you have before you go. It certainly wasn't for me. I think I finished it
quite the opposite.
Yeah, you finish it with more dilemmas and issues than you did before you went.
Totally.
Yeah.
You go to try and find yourself, and you end up completely screwing your head up.
Yeah, you come back going, who the fuck am I? Who am I now?
So yeah, don't do it for that either.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, that's all the questions, mate. And I've kept you for like, gee whiz, hour and almost 2 hours. So I really appreciate that. I've really enjoyed it, mate. I'm sorry because you contacted me ages ago about coming on here, and it took me, oh God, I think about a year before I actually downloaded the book. And well, I've had the book there. I've just never had the chance to read it. So if you're like me, folks, and you don't get the time or don't think you have the time to sit and read a book, get the audiobook, and I'll guarantee you'll be hooked. You'll have it done in a couple of days. It's awesome. So there'll be links down below for that. Chris, is there anything else you want to chat about? Are there any shout outs you want to give? Feel free, stage is yours. You want to plug the book? You want to plug websites? Anything?
I suppose probably one of the things that covers was actually the writing of the book, is which has been as dramatic a story as, for me anyway, as the trip itself. I was never an intellectual, never did very well at school. Probably dyslexic, teacher so was stupid, all the rest of it. But I think if I can write a book and get it the bestsellers list on Amazon, really anybody can. It's been quite a mind-blowing experience for me writing the book. Apart from bringing all the stories about the trip back, but I think most people have a book in them, and it's not an easy thing to do. But there's no reason why you can't do that as well.
Yeah.
And get a lot out of that. Probably maybe get a lot more out of that than positively than actually doing a journey in the first place.
How did you find it reliving? How did you find it reliving the trip again? Like writing the book and reliving all those experiences?
Quite strange in a way, because a lot of stuff, there's been a lot of things that have happened in the 40 years since then. I was lucky that I'd basically written a manuscript when I was 22 when I came home. So I'd written a story as a 22-year-old. So it was quite lovely reading as a 60-odd-year-old, reading what I was thinking and what I was doing when I was 22. And it all brought memories back. It's all in the back of the brain somewhere. It's so fogged up with years of alcohol and drug abuse and other things going on. But it's all been in there. You get the story, start reading your diaries and reading the journals and looking at the photographs and writing it down. I suppose one of the ways it's described it is like scraping paint off a piece of wood. You're scraping layers and layers off, and eventually what actually happens comes back to you quite clearly. It's all in the back of your head somewhere. It's like it's all memorized somewhere, but it just takes a while to get it out again. Yeah, that's what's beauty about photographs and diaries. It certainly helps jog the memory to get to do that.
Yeah,
but no, it was a wonderful thing, because I've been able to contact again, as I say, the guy in Israel, the guy in Scotland I met before, and guys in Australia that I've travelled with. Not talking to somebody for 40 years and then meeting up with them, and after 5 minutes you're talking as if you've met them or you haven't seen them for a year, maybe, sort of thing. It's been fantastic, But But yeah, so you got to buy the book. It's, Chris Donaldson World is my website, chrisdonaldson.world, or Amazon. Company we love and hate at the same time.
Yeah, you self-published on Amazon. Is that right?
Self-published on Amazon, yeah. Those guys are taking over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they do such a, this incredible company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it works, doesn't it? It works.
It works, yeah. And it's tremendous. It means that the likes of yourself and myself can write a book and have it read all over the world. So it's pretty amazing. It's technology has brought so much into the world that you've sort of become so used to it, you don't think about it anymore. But actually, stop and think. It is totally amazing.
I mean, we're so fortunate, aren't we, now to be in this position? For sure. It's I found myself, when I was listening to the book, I found myself sort of just almost trying to put myself into your shoes back then. You know, like I could what's the word? What's the word? You know, I would listen to you talking about certain situations, and I could think I had a similar sort of thing, not on the same level, but I had a similar sort of thing here. But as we discussed, I've got my phone in my pocket, and I've got almost instant access to, you know, the Thunderbirds if I need them. I can just hit the big red button, please help. And I remember just thinking to myself, oh, you had none of that. You know, you're just totally winging it on your own, by hook, by prayer, by your wits. And wow, I remember thinking, that's fucking amazing. But also, oh my God. Like, did you appreciate that at the time? Like,
not at the time, no, whatever.
You were on your own there.
I knew it was on my own, but certainly looking back on it, when you read about the sort of Victorian explorers when they were doing it completely without anything at all, any communication or knowing what was going on, and look at what we're doing now, I was certainly closer to them at that stage than I was to what's going on now. But as you say, what you do now is what is the norm. Yeah, I think before that was old. I think new is somewhere in the future. Who knows? In the future. So it is. It was a tremendous experience, and somebody said to me, "A good adventure is one that's hell at the time, but you can think fondly of it back when you're sitting in the pub later."
Absolutely.
So certainly had a few of them.
Folks, read the book. Please, just read the book. Even if you've got no intention to do anything like this, just read the book. It's phenomenal. Cracking job, Chris. Cracking job. Love it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, folks, all the links for the books and everything, Chris's socials, his website, that'll all be down below. So if you're watching the video, have a look at the vid description. If you're listening to the podcast, have a look at the show notes, and it'll all be there. All the links will be there. So make sure you give Chris a follow as well. Chris, loved it. Absolutely loved it, mate. Been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Really appreciate you giving up your evening to me.
You too, Bruce. Been a pleasure.
And folks, if you've enjoyed this one, please hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you're watching the videos, if you're listening, try and leave us a little review. That'd be awesome. We're sort of top 3 in the UK automotive podcasts. So yeah, leave a little review and see if we can bump it a wee bit higher. That'd be awesome. All right, folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. Keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha! Dude, mint, I loved it. Let me just stop this.